What if I told you a fundamental shift in global power is underway? It isn't happening on a battlefield or in the halls of the United Nations. The blueprints are being drawn up on the water. A revolutionary concept emerging from Africa could not only redefine urban living for millions, but might just challenge American energy influence for good. We're talking about the prototype for a self-powered floating city, a marvel of engineering with the goal of requiring zero outside energy. While it's being hailed as a triumph for sustainable development, it's also sending ripples through Washington. In this video, we'll uncover why this African innovation isn't just a technological dream. It's a potential threat to the global power structure as we know it. To understand why a floating city concept in Africa could make a superpower nervous, we first need to look at the current world order. For decades, global influence has been tied to energy. Nations that control oil, gas, and the financial systems that trade them hold immense power. The United States, with its economic might and strategic influence over global energy markets, has long sat at the top of this hierarchy. This has created a global dependency, where developing nations, particularly in Africa, often find themselves reliant on foreign energy and aid. Many African countries face a twin crisis: rapid urbanization and severe energy deficits. Over 600 million people on the continent lack access to electricity, a reality that stifles industrialization, education, and economic growth. This energy poverty has historically made nations vulnerable to outside pressure and market shocks, locking them in a cycle of dependence. For African leaders, achieving energy sovereignty isn't just a development goal. It's the cornerstone of real political and economic independence. This is the old world context, a world where energy is power, and that power has been concentrated far from the African continent. But the tide might be about to turn. The seeds of this revolution were planted in Makoko, a sprawling waterfront community in the heart of Lagos, Nigeria. Often called the Venice of Africa, Makoko is a city built on stilts, where canoes are the main form of transport and life moves in rhythm with the water. It was here that Nigerian-born architect Kunal Adeyemi and his firm NL developed a game-changing prototype, the Makoko Floating School. This wasn't just a school. It was a proof of concept for a whole new way of living. The structure was an elegant, three-story A-frame made from locally sourced timber and bamboo, floating on a platform of 256 recycled plastic barrels. This allowed it to rise and fall with the lagoon's changing water levels, making it invulnerable to the floods that plague many coastal cities. It was designed to be sustainable, with solar panels for electricity, rainwater harvesting, and natural ventilation. This prototype has since evolved into what is now known as the Makoko Floating System, or MFS. It is a prefabricated modular system that can be locally produced and assembled by hand. This means it's not a one-off wonder. It's a scalable solution. The system has already been deployed in various forms in 5 countries across 3 continents, proving its adaptability. NL and partners like the UNDP are now working on the Makoko Waterfront Regeneration Plan, a visionary project to build an entire sustainable community on the water, showing a path for climate-resilient urban futures across the continent. This isn't just about one community anymore. It's about creating a blueprint for the African water cities of the future. So what makes this floating city concept so revolutionary? It's the potential synergy of sustainable architecture and energy independence. The architectural brilliance is in its simplicity and adaptability. The MFS modules can be scaled from a single home to a multi-story building, linked together to create entire neighborhoods. This offers a solution to one of Africa's biggest problems: how to handle rapid urbanization on coastlines that are increasingly vulnerable to climate change. Instead of fighting the water, these cities live with it. But the true game changer is the energy vision. The goal is complete self-sufficiency. Solar panels are integrated into the buildings themselves. The real leap forward, however, could come from tapping into one of Africa's most underutilized resources: its vast water surfaces. A study by the European Commission's Joint Research Center revealed the continent's staggering potential for floating solar power. It found that installing floating solar panels on just 1% of the area of Africa's hydropower reservoirs could potentially double the continent's current hydropower capacity and increase its electricity output by 58%. For countries that rely heavily on hydropower but suffer from frequent droughts, this is a monumental concept. Floating solar farms not only generate clean electricity but also reduce water evaporation from the reservoirs, which could boost the output from the dams themselves. Research from 2024 suggests that floating solar is already becoming cost-competitive with land-based solar and could even avoid the need to build many controversial new dams, protecting ecosystems and communities. This creates a resilient, decentralized energy model, free from the constraints of unstable national grids and foreign fuel supplies. This brings us to the central question. Why would this progress in Africa be perceived as a threat in Washington? The fear isn't about military conflict. It's about influence. For a century, power has been tied to energy. The United States' global position is deeply intertwined with its role in the global energy market. Africa's pursuit of self-powered cities and energy independence could directly challenge this status quo. An energy-independent Africa could become a more economically independent Africa. Nations that can power their own industries, create jobs, and foster growth without external interference are nations that can chart their own course. This would represent a monumental shift in the global balance of power. It's a move from a world heavily influenced by a single superpower's agenda to a multipolar world where new centers of innovation emerge. Africa, long seen as a continent to be helped, is now positioning itself as a leader in next-generation sustainable technology. This leapfrogging, skipping the old centralized fossil fuel-dependent model and moving directly to a decentralized renewable one, is what could cause alarm. It disrupts the established order. It signals that the future of urban development may not be designed in Silicon Valley or Washington, but in Lagos, Kigali, and Mindelo. The continent could be moving from a pawn in the geopolitical chess game to a player with its own strategy. Section 5. The counter-argument. Challenges and realities. Of course, this vision is not without its challenges. The journey from a prototype like the Makoko Floating School to a continent-wide network of floating cities is long and full of obstacles. One of the biggest hurdles is scale. Can this technology, currently built by hand from local materials, be scaled up fast enough to meet the continent's massive urbanization needs? The social and political realities are also incredibly complex. The very community of Makoko that inspired this innovation has faced repeated threats of eviction from the government. This highlights the disconnect that can exist between grassroots innovation and official urban planning. A comprehensive regeneration plan for Makoko has been presented to the government but has been waiting for full implementation for years. There's also the risk of digital geopolitics. As Africa becomes a new frontier for tech innovation, global powers are competing for influence. Ensuring that this technological revolution benefits ordinary citizens, rather than just becoming a new tool for corporate profit or government control, is a critical challenge. The path forward requires not just brilliant engineering, but also inclusive governance and a laser focus on social equity. What began as a single floating school in a Lagos lagoon has become the seed of a much larger idea: a self-sufficient, sustainable, and resilient future for Africa's coastal cities. The Makoko floating system is more than just an architectural marvel. It is a declaration of intent. It's a statement that the solutions to Africa's greatest challenges, climate change, urbanization, and energy poverty, can and will come from within. The technology to decouple growth from fossil fuels and to build thriving cities in harmony with nature is now within reach. While the West debates the slow transition away from its legacy infrastructure, parts of Africa have the chance to leapfrog directly into the future. The nervousness in the West isn't really about a floating city. It's about a shifting world. It's about the end of an era defined by energy dependence and the dawn of a new one, where innovation can emerge from anywhere and redefine the very meaning of global power. The continent that was once a theater for geopolitical competition is now taking control of its own destiny, building a future that not only floats on water but stands on its own 2 feet. What do you think this new wave of African innovation means for the rest of the world? Is this the beginning of a major shift in global power dynamics? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this analysis insightful, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the technologies that are reshaping our world. Thank you for watching. The conversation about floating cities cannot be separated from the broader narrative of Africa's redefinition of innovation itself. For decades, narratives about the continent were framed around scarcity, dependence, and instability. But what we are witnessing now is a shift from dependency to originality, where African solutions are not just patching problems but reimagining the systems entirely. Floating cities symbolize a refusal to be limited by geography, politics, or outdated technology. They embody resilience against climate change, ingenuity in design, and determination in energy independence. Imagine coastal regions once considered uninhabitable due to rising seas transforming into thriving urban centers powered by the sun, the water, and the people themselves. This is not a copy-paste version of Western urban planning. It is a uniquely African blueprint, and that is why it is so disruptive. The old global order is built on Africa as a resource, but the new order could be built on Africa as a leader. If successful, these cities could be exported as models to vulnerable coastlines worldwide, from Bangladesh to the Pacific Islands. In that sense, what begins in Makoko may end up reshaping the very future of human settlement in the age of climate change.